Bonjour à toutes, bonjour à tous. On continue le cycle École plurielle avec une 4e conférence. Donc c'est un cycle qu'on a appelé École plurielle qui interroge la formation d'un architecte aujourd'hui, qui était en réaction aux événements de 2023. Et donc qu'on propose de re-questionner aujourd'hui un peu post-crise. C'est un cycle qu'on organise avec Iris Lacoudre, Camille Sino qui ne peut pas être avec nous aujourd'hui, Louison Boisset et Agathe Henry et Tim Forlen. On a eu la semaine dernière l'intervention de Stéphanie Dadour et avant ça des interventions plus historiques. Et aujourd'hui, on a l'intervention de Niklas Fanelsa.
Donc bienvenue Niklas, c'est la première fois que Niklas vient dans notre école. Je vais le présenter en français mais la conférence sera en anglais. Donc Niklas Fanelsa est architecte fondateur de l'atelier Fanelsa, dont vous connaissez peut-être le travail, qui est basé à Berlin. Il a été chercheur à l'université d'Aix-la-Chapelle, au BTU Cottbus et à l'université Bauhaus de Weimar. Et en 2022, Niklas Fanelsa a été nommé professeur de la chaire architecture de design à l'école d'ingénierie et de design de l'université technique de Munich. Donc si on a invité Niklas aujourd'hui, c'est à la fois pour sa pratique en tant qu'architecte, mais aussi pour son travail pédagogique en tant qu'enseignant à la fois dans une institution, mais aussi dans des formes pas forcément institutionnelles, plutôt de workshops qu'il a auto-initiés, dont il va vous parler plus précisément, à Brandenburg, qui est donc un contexte plus rural. Et donc c'est cette pratique croisée, à la fois praticien, enseignant, chercheur, qui nous intéressait dans le travail de Niklas. Et donc aujourd'hui, il va aussi nous parler beaucoup de la question du soin et comment elle infuse toutes ces différentes strates de sa pratique. So thank you so much, Niklas, for being with us today. We're very, very happy to have you and that you traveled all the way to Paris-Est. Maybe just a few words about the postcard from Agathe.
Bon, comme d'hab, on vous réintroduit vite fait les cartes, mais dans l'idée, donc la question que vous pose Niklas aujourd'hui, c'est comment devient-on des humains débrouillards ? Donc vous avez compris, la conférence sera en anglais et libre à vous d'écrire que ce soit en mots ou en dessin ou peu importe, si vous êtes inspiré même avec des refs qui vous viennent pendant la conférence, sentez-vous libre. Et comme d'hab, c'est anonyme. Et bonne conférence à tous et hâte de voir vos réponses.
Good, thank you. Yes, also from myself, very warm welcome here to this lunchtime brown bag lecture, so food seems to be welcome. Yeah, also thank you for the nice introduction and the invitation, and to have the possibility here to come to Paris, have a small stop here at your university, and then also visit some other architecture practices, which for me is very important. Because in Germany, a lot of architects, they dream about certain architecture, and then they look at Switzerland, and sometimes I cannot understand this, because for me France is very much more a kind of ally in Europe when it comes to architecture. Because of its size, because of its approach, maybe also because of its building industry. So in that sense, I'm quite happy to be here in Paris, also to look at what European shared agendas can be formed and how this can transform the building industry, not only in Germany, not only in France, but in whole Europe. So I prepared a small lecture, a small input. You see there are different topics I would like to address concerning design practices, rural resources, regenerative materials, bioregional architecture, and also at the lab, so at what we do as research. So let's say we start by having a more broad agenda, a more look on a certain way of practice, and we kind of have this small lecture to end also in teaching at the end. So, but maybe first a small introduction to my landscape. So also your university has this kind of notion of the territory. You have this beautiful name of the terroir, mostly known for wine, from maybe wine or food making. And let's say this is my terroir of architecture, where I've just been. And this is the hilly landscape of Brandenburg, the landscape around Berlin and in East Germany. And as you can see, it's very sparsely populated. You have a lot of agriculture fields, very big fields, but there is this kind of small hills. There's these kind of pockets of greenery you can see. Yeah, and this image is part of a series with a photographer. Her name is Sarah Pfeiffer. So she does really amazing photography documentations, and we liked her and we collaborated with her on a project called 4 Seasons, where she visited us along the 4 seasons of a year. And she not only, and basically we gave her a carte blanche, and so not only focusing on buildings, but also making beautiful images of the landscape and of the inhabitation, let's say. So so this is for me a very also important image of our village. It's our neighbor, and he kind of arranged this outside living space. And maybe this also tells of a certain opportunity in the countryside, of a certain way of living. And also, he is quite young, so my age, but as you can see here, the cat pillow, of course, this is not by him, but by the former inhabitant of the house you see on the very left. And also this kind of white, which is white textile, which used to be a kind of blanket for a table, which is now this kind of curtain. And I think this kind of new interpretation of the old, using of what is there, making yourself at home, is something important also for us. I mean, here, this is, let's say, a more public setting. It's a small shop for clothing on the left, and the building itself we renovated. But as you can see in this image, the photographer, you don't know if she is kind of focusing on the interesting plant or this kind of shop. And our building is more or less in the making the background and the infrastructure. So these are some more images of our village, Gerswalde. On the left you see the great garden, a former garden nursery, where we just put up this stage for cultural events. And it didn't need much. There was just this kind of platform, and it can be a stage, but it can also be a hangout spot. It can, you can sit just there and read a book, as you can see. And on the right is an image of a garden, a very big and beautiful garden. But now the woman who's living there is moved away, and now this garden will transform. So as the seasons transform, also the inhabitants and maybe the use of these gardens. And I mean, this maybe connects to all this kind of fascination of a different possible lifestyle in the countryside, where you can just put up a kind of outside living space, or you can have a bathroom in the outside. These kind of moments are important, I think, and they are also for us, say, a starting point, and they set a certain framework, so you can say, And I think through this kind of fascination, we were also drawn there to that particular village, because I've studied in Japan, and by a coincidence in that village there used to be a Japanese cafe. So and this I told to a friend, and then who I met in Japan, in Tokyo, and he liked the village so much he moved there. And so I thought, okay, when he now moves there, I also want to be there more often. And we found this kind of ruin on the left being part of this monument ensemble of these 3 buildings, and it was almost collapsing. And this was in a way our starting point 5 years ago in that village. So a design practice, I think that is quite important, to set yourself a certain agenda, to set yourself a certain practice, and maybe also a certain value system. And for me, I always asked myself, can we build houses, can we have buildings who have a radius of 100 kilometers, so who are embedded in their direct landscape, in their direct territory. So only the champagne from Champagne can be told like this, and maybe only this bee house from Bavaria is a Bavarian bee house. So this question on the connection of material, of practice and buildings. And the second question which came at the beginning was like, can all building materials be regenerative? So here you can see an image from Oslo, the outside, the museum, folk museum. So whenever I go to a city, I go to the folk museum. Actually, I never been in the Paris Folk Museum, but maybe that's up on the agenda next. And in these folk museums, you can really discover interesting things. So, for example, here you have this massive wood building, you have this green roof, and you have this birch bark, and the birch bark being kind of water protection of the wood, and being a kind of protection also from the green roof. So basically this building could be dismantled and could be just left on the side, and it would go back to nature after some time. And of course, next to this piece of architecture, of course, is also a habitat not only for humans, but also for animals, for plants, probably also for bacteria. And this is, of course, connected to this kind of regenerative materials. So materials which are beyond sustainable. So we are in university, so it's okay to show some slides with some text, I think, as well. But I think that is important because from these kind of 2 questions, I arrived at the term of bioregionalism. This was also quite new to me a couple of years ago, but it's a term coming from mostly from the 70s, from West American thinkers and practitioners, and I think it's quite fitting to architecture as well. So you have this kind of connection of the local ecosystem, culture and economy, and it promotes regenerative practices tailored to specific bioregions. So I think for me this was quite important, this kind of local approach, because for decades we are kind of drawn to that approach of globalism, and we are thinking that we can only solve global problems by global action, and I feel this is very difficult, as we can see, And I think another approach would be this local approach. So to, as Bruno Latour says, re-territorialize yourself and become again a person connected to a local region. And basically this is a certain bioregionalism idea, which in other disciplines it's already very much present. So you can look at the food sector, slow food movement, you can look at the fashion industry, and you have a lot of approaches in other fields, and I think for architecture this could be a possible direction. So we now look at bioregions of Europe, and what I like very much about this image is that Munich and Paris, we are now in the same bioregion. So, I mean, as we are Europe, as Europe has also certain shared policies like agriculture, actually, we could apply this look of Europe being divided by or like distinct by certain bioregions. Of course, they're quite big. So let's say, of course, for example, Western European broadleaf forest bioregion number 22 is, is quite big. So we need to have distinctions on it. But I think this is, let's say, a thought and a kind of concept of thought to not look at Europe or to not look at any place on Earth primarily by its political borders, but more by its territorial and specific temperatures, climate conditions. And I think through that a different approach also to architecture appears. Here you see a kind of bioregional division based maybe more on a geographic opinion. And of course, we as architects could also come up with different types of bioregions and different types of definitions on bioregions around us. So last year we had a conference and Nicolas Doval-Bory, he kind of had the bioregion of Paris, for example, with its natural stone culture and buildings. So there you can see also a city can be a bioregion and with its neighboring territory. And so there is researchers, for example, from the Dark Matter Lab from UK. They have this definition of a bioregion. There are like kind of 3 types of lines. So first there is the hard lines, which define a bioregion. So the soil, the earth. There is the soft lines. So there is the kind of forest, the vegetation, the water bodies. And there is the kind of human and more than human lines. So everything which lives in this territory. And I think this also gives a very beautiful definition of what can be a bioregion. So here is a more kind of pragmatic, or let's say a more methodological approach on that. And you can see that I distinguish the bioregion below. Then there are the networks which are necessary to form the top bioregional architecture. And because we are in academia here, I'm also currently writing a paper together with BC Materials and Material Culture from UK and Henriette Wahl from Southern France, Luma, on this whole concept, so that you as students or you as future researchers can apply this method to your architecture, to your research, to your observation of the territory. And as you see on the right, there are like 4 steps. Like first, understanding the bioregion. Second, drawing from the resources. 3, designing networks. and 4, implementing and transformation and scaling. So I think that is also important, because I, as a student, I learned also, I learned architecture, and I learned to judge the solutions that we design based on specific buildings. So let's say that is probably what we all trained of. So we analyze, we define a problem, we come up with a solution, and then we test the solution on a specific case. So let's say, there is a problem of a new scientific building next door to this university. Architect comes up with a solution, and then this solution gets executed. But actually, this is not an approach which a designer would take, because a designer would judge the solution on its scalability. And I think this is also something we as architects can really learn, to more see our solutions and designs as also scalable in other conditions. Yeah. So let's have now a little bit deeper look into this different steps and what does it also mean to define a bioregion and a resource. So let's say on the rural resources, as you see in the beginning, very important resource is the nature, the fields, the forests, water bodies, wetlands. The second resource is the material, so the clay, the fieldstone, the hemp, the straw, timber or sand. So this is also an image by the Sarah Pfeiffer photographer in our village. So for example, this is our local sand pit, and they mostly get sand there for construction or for roads. And as a waste product, they have clay, because they wash the sand, and then clay, the very small particles, are still there. And now we are, for example, using that clay, that waste clay, for our rammed earth walls. So that is, let's say, a connection of the economy, that you look, okay, what is your local economy? What is your local resources in terms of concrete, sand pit, sawmill, and how can this be used, and how can this kind of network be understood? Then very important, craft, because you can invent a nice material like hempcrete, but if you don't have the craftsmen who execute it, nobody will build it. So these are some craftsmen we collaborate with in our project, and we work together with them. And then an important resource, the fifth one, is the tradition. Tradition not in a, let's say, romantic way or in a backward-looking way, but tradition in the way that these old buildings, they contain knowledge in the way how they are built, in the way how it's formed together, but they also contain material. Like on the right, you see this old building with clay bricks, clay walls. So even it's a ruin, for us it's quite an important building. Yeah, and the last is the community. The people and the community of actors living and working and being together, and by this kind of activating also the bioregion. And here's some images from our community. So we have this culture center, a restaurant in the garden, and these artisans producing edible mushrooms. And of course they are linked together and they have synergies, And I think these synergies can also be taken into account when designing architecture. So the next chapter, regenerative materials. I think this already connects to university, and here you see one of our immersive learning formats, which we held in West Germany, and of course these immersive learning formats, they are about to experience really where the material come from. In this case, the wood. So we go in the forest, the students learn how to cut a tree, which is also practical if you know that and you have a license, like the kind of license, tree cutting license. And you get also, of course, in touch with the people who are doing this job. And then we are also always interested in this micro scale, because a lot of our economy is really about centralization and about large-scale operations, but I believe very much in decentralization and small-scale operations. So that's why we invite the cutting machine in the forest, so we can directly cut the trees which have been felled down. And then, of course, it's about a workshop. It's about also designing artifacts and creating them and executing them. So on the last day, the students here built some benches out of this wood. They just have been cut. Yeah, similar to hemp, where we go to the field, learn about the plant. We learn how in the mixture get, let's say, our hands dirty, and also then do some prototypes on site. And I think that is really nice, that these materials, they are really hands-on and easy to handle. You can just go to the neighboring farmer and ask him if he has some leftover straw bales. And then this can be directly used to insulate this small pavilion, and with some soil from the ground for plastering. Yeah, this is the ruin you just saw a picture of, and together with the think tank Bauhaus Earth, we did a workshop there to make a production on-site load-bearing clay bricks. So we had these kind of steps, and then could really crush it, press it, and really have these ready-made bricks. And because in Germany everybody likes testing and certification, we could even do a on-site DIN, so industry norming of these bricks, and look if they are possible to use them for a load-bearing clay brick wall. And they kind of were accepted, which is nice. Yeah, and I think that is always important, that next to architecture, to building materials, it's also about a certain holistic view. So also to learn about food, to learn about the quality of soil, about the bacteria working in the food, the bacteria working in the soil, and plants and herbs for natural dyeing. So let's say there is this kind of holistic overview on learning and making. Yeah, maybe this another workshop in our village, where, let's say, within 3 days, so first food, the second day, the first day construction, the second day food, the third day material. So here the on-site production of the timber structure, of the timber pavilion, and then together setting it up in the small garden. And I think this kind of knowledge, skill and knowledge learning is very important. And it's really also fun to be there and to learn on this. Yeah, and then of course at the end you need to come together and have this concluding moment where you then invite the people you met during the week. You eat the food you have been fermented, and you see this kind of pavilion in reality. So as a next chapter, I would like to present some projects that we did, like some buildings, so that you can see that this kind of starting point with the territory, with the village, with these workshops, with this learning, that this is not, let's say, ending, but it can, or it is a starting point for also architecture. It just sometimes takes a little bit longer, but for me it's very valuable. And here you see a map of our village in Gerswalde, and there is this kind of with and within. So with the resources, with the people, with the tradition, but within this village where we also have an office. And you see from this kind of satellite office, there have been now several projects in that small village. So we have on the right, maybe you can here's my mouse. So this is the our satellite office. On the other side of the street is the ruin, where you just seen the load-bearing clay workshop. Okay, and then down the street, so the neighboring building we are currently redesigning down the street. We just started the construction site for a house 2 weeks ago. Further down the street, there's a site where we started the construction site a couple of months ago. This has been the stage. There's the guest house here, redesigned, a shop. We want to do a community center here. And now, because of all this activity in the village and because of this kind of liveliness, and there is a foundation owning several buildings here, and the foundation decided to also renovate this larger building here for a multi-generational living, so with 8 to 10 units. Yeah, and last week we presented a plan here for this plot for 3 new houses for commercial and living. So maybe you see there is a kind of still ongoing activity in that village, which kind of expanded over the last years. But just maybe to show you the starting point, this kind of barn, which is a monument protected barn, a wood structure with brick infill. In the 50s and 60s, it already had been repaired, as you can see on the left, with this concrete plaster. So this was as found, and it was really about us working on this artifact, this real artifact, the building, and really about us without any plans, more or less, without any drawings, details, just working on site and repairing the structure. But as it was so damaged and broken, we had to insert this steel structure made from reused steel elements, like small standard sizes, inside the building. And then based on this, we had this secondary interior structure. But let's say this old structure, the new structure, this was so, let's say, complicated that these drawings, they kind of were done afterwards, because we had really to decide on site with the craftsmen on the best solutions. And it was really this kind of puzzle of joining on, holding. On the right, you see a kind of detail on how the old structure has been secured. On the left, you see the new facade appearing behind the really damaged wall. Yeah, and this is, let's say, the inside, where you see the old white beams and the new red structure with the lime screed and sunflower oil finishing. Yeah, so we imagined this space as also a kind of productive space, not a, let's say, romantic holiday house in an old barn, but more as a kind of really industrial or rural industrial space. So in that sense, it used to be this kind of chicken barn, and we wanted it to also a little bit stay on this kind of idea. But at the same time, when we had the chance to insert new precise elements, we designed, for example, this staircase. So there was a friend from Japan visiting, and he built one staircase with us, the lower one, and then afterwards we had the knowledge and we continued on the top ones. So it's, let's say, it's a kind of workshop, it's an office, but upstairs you can also sleep. So currently there are 2 members of the atelier living there in these niches, because we are around 3 to 4 people in that office. So that is, let's say, also this kind of daily atmosphere of the space being used. Yeah, maybe a brief look on a second project, the ruin, where everybody in the village was really disappointed about the way it looks. So they didn't had any romantic feeling or connection to it, but for us we had really this connection, and we felt we need to continue rebuilding it and repairing it and giving also new life in the center of the village. This I explained with the bricks. Here this kind of test kitchen, testing the bricks on their capacity, and then directly on site, making tests, making one-to-one mock-ups on how we imagine the building in the future. So let's say the building becomes really this kind of laboratory of testing, making mistakes, and finding out and inventing details. For example, on the right, for the clay plaster, outside clay plaster. But learning also here with the local retired mason who was helping us on repairing the brickwork. Yeah, and let's say the trash from the one construction site is our design material for our interventions, and here the leftover wood can be a good protection for material, but at the same time also collaborating with other designers. Here, Agnieszka Polkowska from Poland, who has very much capability on soil and the kind of chromography of soil. So here, these kind of images is a kind of photo, you can say, from the soil. So you take part of the soil and then you filter it and you put it on the middle, and then because it's a kind of like analog photography, the ingredients of the soil or of the plants on the left make this kind of image, and then based on the image you can tell about the ingredients and the quality of the soil or the quality of the plant. So I think these kind of methods are really nice because they transform this kind of technical knowledge and graphs into something beautiful and graphic. So this is how it looks now. Yeah, you have to invite me again in 2 years, then I can show you some more images of this project, but it's ongoing. Yeah. So a building finished more recently is this stage, also in Brandenburg, in a historic castle, and it's a stage for concerts, for operas, for any kind of events, bazaar, like castle nights a day, and yeah, so it's really important for the local rural community. But it was at the same time very difficult to make a new building on a historic castle. So we have been asked to basically design a stage for 200 people in an opera, but also for a building which is not visible when it's not used. So yeah, we came up with this. So everything can be closed. Actually, the lower parts can also be put underneath the platform. And then when there's a performance, when there's an event, an exhibition, the 3 buildings open up, they fold up. And then the glass can also fold up. So you have really this transparent and open pavilions to the stage. And on the top you see these kind of funny metal details there because of the installations for light and sound they do. So this is the view back, and we really were lucky that a local company got the commission to execute the project, and they were like super precise on the details. And I think this was only possible because they were from the village, and for them, they wanted to do a good job. And next, so you can also go on top of these pavilions and you can perform from above. So there's this 2-sided stage. So either the visitors, the audience sits on the terrace and looks towards the castle, or the other way around, the visitors sit on the castle ground and look towards the 3 pavilions. And depending on this, the upper level is also used as a stage or as a technical space. And maybe you see very soft on the glass this ornament of the triangles, which is the logo of the castle. And in Germany, you have to put something there because birds can fly or older people won't see the glass clearly. So you have to put some element, a visual kind of identification of these glass windows. Yeah, and we use this kind of necessity also for design. So I think that is important to not see the regulations and the requirements as a kind of enemy, but to see that as a way of designing with the given framework. So now I come to the last chapter, which is the Bioregional Design Lab at the Technical University of Munich. So that is how it looked. We just recently moved to a new location, but our team of the lab really likes to, next to teaching and research, also to do exhibitions. And it's really this kind of lab investigating materials and researching on new possibilities in architecture connected to bioregional materials. So what you've just saw now is really going in the next step in teaching, but also in research. And I think in this there's still a very large opportunity in Europe for research in architecture. So this is what is, let's say, our framework in the university. So in the master course in the winter semester, each year we give a certain topic and a certain bioregion. So as you see, I started 3 years ago, and 3 years ago the first theme was wood in the region of Oberpfalz. The second year was hops, so the plant which is used for brewing beer in Hallertau. And last year was paludi, so everything connected to peatland and wetlands. So the use of paludi plants for the construction industry, especially in the Pre-Alps region. Yeah, and this year, for example, we will continue in the upper corner with hemp. So this kind of region, these bioregions and these materials really gives us a good framework of investigating the economies, the local economies, going in the forest, learning about the actors, learning how they are producing. So this is at the very beginning. We go in the forest, we learn on the on the value chain, how it's been processed, the sawmill, the carpenter, the construction sites. So to really see this regional value chain on wood and its potential. And then we also do these kind of large mappings, understanding the actors, and sometimes we even look, we of course look also on a global scale, because in terms of wood, which is perceived as a sort of positive material, but actually in EU, almost 20% is illegal wood, so illegally logged. So that is, let's say, a huge topic. So that is also something we address in this first analysis phase. And then in the second phase, the students develop prototypes. So here you see a prototype looking at a certain alternative linoleum, you can say, from bark, wood bark. The students, they looked at AI and the future of this region. And then at the end, what is very important, to have these kind of concluding events. So the concluding event on the left, you can see it's a kind of exhibition, but at the same time, the students, they are organizing it, and they are inviting stakeholders. They're doing roundtables here on the right, so with politicians, leaders from associations, scientists, lobbyists, so everybody who is, in this case, concerned about regional wood in Oberpfalz had to be there. And then the team of the two students, they kind of moderated this roundtable and panel discussion. So throughout the day, there are really different types of events happening at this concluding event. And so for me, a positive feedback is always when I'm there and somebody comes to me and asks me, hey, what are you doing here actually? And then, so I'm also a kind of visitor, or let's say part of this, maybe being part of the team of students, but not being the one who kind of performing this concluding event. Maybe a little more insights in the second semester, second year, where we focused on hops. And this images from the concluding event, where students also were researching on fibers for textile. They were in the hops queen was there to find out what new innovation in the building industry can be from hops. There were different members of the economy, and the students were presenting their ideas on, for example, agri-PV, so photovoltaic installation on hops fields, or a kind of innovation center in this case. And of course, the students, they are very capable of producing nice video content and images. And there's always a kind of video screening and together with all the guests and experts. So these kind of concluding events are also an opportunity of interacting with a larger public, not just the students, not just the teachers, but let's say a larger kind of public audience. And of course, the students, they do the design of the exhibition. It's about lifelong learning. Here, a group of students collaborated with a local bakery in making waste from the making bread from waste from the brewing process. There were some hands-on workshops. So there is really a lot of going on. And we have this kind of secret rule that there are no architectural plans, no models, no visualizations, no architectural like building projects, but everything else is allowed. So here's an insulation panel from hops and mycelium, a facade system, and the student presenting the facade system to the manufacturer of this string. So they are directly in contact with a possible application of this facade system, hops facade. So maybe to sum up this talk, for me it's very much about scaling. So scaling of networks through collaboration in research and development, and definitely also designing a new value system for the whole construction industry and for the whole construction sector. Because in Germany, architects is around 5%, I assume in France as well. So as we are here, we are just representing the future 5% of the construction industry. And if we want to change how it's working, if we want to change how the building look, what materials are being used, on what working conditions are the buildings built, we really have to persuade the other 95%, and in this, designing these new value systems. Thank you. If you want to follow us, the students have an Instagram where they post. It's collective.and. It's a student account from our design studio, and the upper one is the architecture practice account.
Donc, si vous avez maintenant des questions particulières à poser, I'll begin with one question. So, thank you for your presentation. Maybe first of all, so the concept of rural resources is very rich for thinking about the transformation of villages, as you have presented. However, can these resources and more broadly the concept of bioregions can be applied to maybe the transformation of larger scale cities?
Largest, but like the city, or I mean, what I try to present is a design of networks. So I have been educated in designing of spaces, and probably I assume you are also very much educated in designing of spaces, but I now follow the design of networks, and for network is spanning over the territory, so it's not, for the network it can exist in the rural, it's connected to the city, and vice versa.
So thank you so much, it was really inspiring. I was wondering, I didn't get how big is the group for the work you show us, and how long do you work together, and like on the practical aspects, how many are you, and for which amount of time, because it seems to be a lot of work. So.
You mean in the office or university? I mean in the
on the workshop teaching work you show us, but I don't really understand if it was part of the traditional architectural school or if it was something else.
So the workshops I showed, they are mostly 3 to 5 days. So we are in the next workshop we plan in May, and it's 5 days. And there it's quite big. It's like 32 students from Aachen, from Aix-la-Chapelle, and from Munich. But the workshops I showed, there are around 16 to 18 people. And then we try to make 2 or 3 groups so that there are like 6 to 8 people in every group and 1 tutor. And the workshops, I always try to have a variety of disciplines. So for example, to have construction, material, textile, or to have landscape, material, so to have a certain variety, not only focusing on making a nice wood pavilion, but also making the textile, dressing the wood pavilion, and making the food for the concluding event, so that there's always a kind of connection of different disciplines.
Okay, thank you.
Si vous avez des questions, on peut aussi les traduire pour vous.
Vous pouvez les poser en français, il n'y a pas du tout de honte à pas parler anglais. Moi, thank you so much, Niklas, for your inspiring lecture. I really appreciated that you showed a lot of processes. You talk about network, but all the photos you showed talk a lot about how things are made, not only actually the result, but also even a building that is still in process and that we're looking forward to see what it will become. And you said something that I think was very interesting when you talked about architecture acting in the background, not necessarily putting it as like the front only thing we have to talk about, but actually talking about all the processes behind the actual building. But then I was wondering, because you didn't show so many drawings, you said that the drawings were made afterwards, and I was wondering whether it would be in your practice, but also maybe in pedagogy, if that ever comes, if the drawing as a tool is ever coming, or if that's something on purpose you decide to not work with, or work with it at the very last moment, or on site with a craftsman, or just this tool of the drawing. I was very curious to hear you about it.
Yeah, I really like artifacts, real artifacts, and for me, drawing is not an artifact, but it's a meta-artifact, because maybe this is a little bit theoretical, but or like a model, it's also a meta-artifact. A visualization is only a meta-artifact, because it's not the real building itself. It's just a kind of stands in for the building. You know, you design the floor plan as a form of abstraction of the building. So in that sense, I'm really like these kind of real artifacts. So, but of course we do material tests, and then we do like really one-to-one material tests, and through the making of this material, we get new knowledge, and then we transform this. Or I showed one project, the ruin, where we really on site make changes, and then through the changes on site we have a new knowledge, and then change our, or let's say the design of the building or the space according to that. So I would say this is the focus, but nevertheless, of course, we also draw. I mean, at the end, in the university, we draw, but then it's maybe more a certain way of mapping or a different, but I mean, now we are also in the 4th semester, we are looking at insulation, and of course there we need to draw the wall and draw how the new insulation is connecting with the old structure, and so I wouldn't say drawing is not important at all. I mean, I think for us, we as architects and designers, we are very good at making a complex question in a way simple or understandable, and drawing, I would say, is a method for doing that. So I would, but I know I experience people draw less and less. So I also feel in new people at our office, they directly open the CAD and then they draw and cut. But maybe they should have started first, make a really 5-minute hand sketch, and then they would know what they want to draw. So, But coming back to the beginning, I think I'm really interested in these kind of real artifacts.
Thank you. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? Non, pas d'autres questions. Ah, Louison.
Yes, maybe a question, because as students, where can we find informations to understand the bioregions and in which we are designing our project? Is there a specific platforms to find any informations about bioregions?
I mentioned we are currently writing a paper which is open source, and then you just have to look for this title, Bioregional Architecture Practice. But until that is published, I can recommend the Future Observatory journal from the UK. It's also a very beautiful online magazine, and they have an issue about bioregioning. And if you want to look in France, in Arles, there is Atelier Luma, and they did 2 or 3 publications on a bioregion.
Thank you.
Well, I will maybe just then finish with one last question, or maybe more a comment. If you can just say a bit more about this sentence you said that architecture is acting in the background. I'm just curious because you started with this sentence talking with a very few photos in the very beginning, and I was very curious to hear a bit more you talk about this very special sentence.
Yeah, I think for me, in the back, I mean, I would say that architecture should again be part of the territory, so to say. So coming back to this reference of the food, so, I mean, we like certain food or certain product because they are done in a certain region and they are really connected. And I think this has, before modernization, this has been also to architecture, but we kind of lost our connection to the territory and to this kind of embeddedness. So I think the architecture should be less about us, but more about the whole environment, let's say. And of course, we as architects and the users and the humans, they are part of the environment, but there are also other parts of the environments, the bacteria, the materials, the kind of climate. And I felt we invent a lot of technical devices to be disconnected. And I think there we should be again more in the direction that our buildings, our architecture is kind of embedded of what is there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Niklas. If there is not any more very, very last question, I'm trying. Ah. So the question is if talking about the artifacts that you're talking about in rural areas, if that would make sense to use them also as a resource in the very same way you're doing in rural areas, but in big cities. If this approach to look at artifacts is meaningful also in larger cities.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this larger city also belongs to the territory. I mean, that's why I think it's also sometimes a little bit strange to distinguish the rural and the urban, because at the end, if you look at the materials again, I mean, this, okay, where can I find some real material? Let's assume this is real wood, and yeah, this table would have not been made here, but it comes also from a forest, and in that way, yeah, we are also connected, or there is also a community constituting the urban condition. I mean, maybe in Paris it's more politicians or other kind of actors than in the local small village, but I think the same approach is also being applicable in the urban condition. But still, so far, I mean, almost 50% is still rural, and I think that is also we have in the architecture schools have been trained a lot in solving problems and issues in the city, but I think there's still the big territory, and there we also have to address solutions and innovations. Yeah. So in that sense, I see that there's also potential for this concept here. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Niklas. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.